Greetings, Professor McKay. To supplement my paper for MBA 571 class, and as per the instructions about spending about 50 hours of direct observation, I wanted to go beyond only writing about forced perspective and actually test the technique myself through a series of small shoots. I want to start by saying thank you, Professor McKay, first and foremost, for this format because it allowed me to do something that I think fits the spirit of this course very well. Instead of only summarizing what other people have said, I had to actually observe, test, fail, really fail, adjust, and reflect. That was especially valuable for this topic because forced perspective is one of those techniques that sound simple in theory but becomes operationally demanding the moment you try to execute it. I also really want to thank two of my friends from high school, back in high school, which I did almost 15 years back, Sarthak Ahuja and Manan Gakhar, because they were physically present and helped me make this project possible. We stayed at Sarthak's apartment in Yaletown, which became basically our base for planning and shooting. And my other friend Manan, he drove all the way from Seattle, from Duval, Seattle, and he drove us to all the places so that we could scout for locations and see if our ideas test out or not. I also used Manan's DSLR Nikon 5200 to shoot most of the project, and both of them tremendously helped me document as much of the process as possible. So I want to acknowledge that a big part of this project, and it really depended on their support, time, and effort. My paper asks a very specific question. Should force perspective in film be understood as an operational technique or as an innovation under Clayton Christensen's framework? And my hypothesis being that it is an operational technique, not an innovation, because it improves how films are made without changing who makes them, who captures value, or why audiences watch films. That was my argument in writing, but once I started shooting these videos myself, the idea became much clearer. What I discovered very quickly is that forced perspective is not just a fun visual trick, it is an operational problem. It is about planning, timing, positioning, testing, rework, communication, and control of many variables. In other words, it fits operations management much better than it fits language of disruption or innovation. So I plan to shoot about five different ideas, including one original idea, and recreate the remaining four. Each idea brought its own unique operational challenge. We planned the shoot on February 20th, 21st, and 22nd in that weekend window based on everybody's availability. But unfortunately, there was no sunlight. It was overcast skies, rain, and limited daylight around that time. So, right away, before getting into the visual illusion itself, the project became an operations management exercise. Weather changed our locations, logic, our timing, and even our execution. And because force perspective depends so much on control, losing control over light meant losing control over consistency. We tried to document as much as we could. That included equipment testing, cameras, mics, and just to make sure that we could shoot efficiently enough not to waste the short window we had. What I learned from this uh, from very early stage that directly supports my paper. Force perspective is not about big creative breakthrough. It is about many small adjustments. And that connects very close to the course discussions about improvement through repeated refinement. And also to your point, Professor McKay, that productivity and quality depend on doing the exact doing the thing exactly as intended, not approximately. So I will now go through the five ideas briefly. For each one, I will explain the operational learning, not just the visual result. The first idea was jumping from large bottles. And I'm going to share my screen in a moment. I got this idea from an Instagram reel, and it was three guys jumping over Coca-Cola bottles, five of those. So I visited Mountain Warehouse and I got these flasks that, uh, and I got about four of those flasks because they had like a wide base on top, and I thought it might we could do something with these. And I'm gonna share my screen and share the idea that I had. Uh, so this was the first concept that we had about these Coca-Cola bottles, and there's three guys jumping over them. Uh, so to execute that, we were looking for locations, and I think we drove up north from Yaletown, and we ended up going to Porto Cove Provincial Park, and this was the place where we visited all the way from Yaletown, and we ended up to its parking lot because my friend Sarthak suggested it has a very wide parking lot, and we could actually execute ideas. So originally we were supposed to execute another idea, but it was so windy there that uh, uh, um, we found a space where we could execute this idea. And so there was I think we were trying to look for a place where we could set up our cameras, and and our water bottles where we could basically plan it. And so we found this log and some space over that log where we could set up our water bottles. But it was really windy, and these bottles could not stand on top of these. So eventually we had to put duct tape at the base of it. And I think you could see we ended up putting some tape at the base of those bottles so that just they could stay at one position. And I think uh, before that, we tried to use the caps of the bottle, the cup of the flask that we had, and I was trying to position myself, and both my friends were trying to help me position on that so that it works. Eventually, ended up using the bottles, and I'm going to show the video that we ended up using. So uh, I think this is our one of our takes where we were trying to test it. It was really windy. I think I'm going to lower the volume. There's people walking in the background, so I think, but this video was just to test it out and test to see if things work or not. I mean, this was one of those clearest examples why forced perspective is operational. The concept looked very simple when you watch the final short video that you see, but the illusion suggests that a person is interacting with these giant bottles. To make that believable, the bottle has to sit in the correct foreground position. The human subject, has to align with it at the correct background distance, and the movement has to happen in a way that basically preserves the illusion for exact duration of the action. So the challenge was not the concept, the challenge was alignment. The flask was moved even slightly, or if the jumper landed too early or too late relative to the frame, the illusion stopped working. I mean, even people walking in the background. So, this idea basically taught me that force perspective is highly sensitive to timing, not just spatial placement, but timing. This connects to operations because now the shot is not only about design, it is also about coordination between the performer and the camera operator. In my paper, I argue that forced perspective improves how a film is made, but does not change who makes it or how the market works. This first example, this specific example, sort of reinforces it. Nothing about the technique changed the structure of the filmmaking, but it dramatically changed the process of making that shot. It shifted effort towards pre-visualization, testing, and repeated takes. So even a playful bottle jump illusion behaves like a process design problem. So I'm gonna show the next one. I think we ended up doing this one pretty all right. Uh, we had set up the markers, and I think I'm being a little dramatic, just to show that this is a real. These are very small places, and I might actually fall. And so this is how we are trying to do it. And I think I'm being very dramatic here. And so, and I think we did multiple takes of these videos. And if you, I ended up falling in one of these, I think it was very slippery there. Yeah, this is the one. And while we were traveling, one point to note, the camera, this black line in the video. So while we were traveling, I think something touched the camera and something cracked within itself. And so we were trying to figure out why these lines consistently appear in all of our videos, and it's going to be there throughout our video. So if you look at the anatomy of the camera, there's this reflex mirror. So I think something touched, came in close contact with the camera, and it broke, made a crack in this reflex mirror. We thought maybe it's the lens that caused the problem, but turned out the reflex mirror within the DSLR sort of cracked. So all of our videos are going to be, it's going to have this crack in those. So this was our very first idea. And for my second idea, Sarthak sort of was playing around it with it. And I had bought this garden pot, this hanging garden pot, where you could fill soil and plant seeds in it. So I basically got this pot and thought maybe we'll place it in a way that two tiny people are coming out of it. So this was one of the original ideas. We planned on shooting it. I'm gonna show in a second what was the concept behind it. So in the same location, we placed this pot and a stone obstacle, and we were trying to test this one out. I think both of the hoods, the top of our hoods are visible through this, but we're gonna adjust this. So the idea was that we're gonna push the stone coming out of that small pot or bucket, and this was the idea that we had. But how are we going to push? So my friend Manan, he tried to push the rock with the stick. But apparently the way it was pushed was seen in the camera, and it kind of didn't work out. But we kept tried and testing, and I think this was the next we planned. He kept trying pushing with the camera, and when we saw the video, we had to plan it to do the pushing part from outside the camera to make it convincing that we are pushing the rock. And eventually after I think this one is us coming out of this is eventually us coming out of that. I'm gonna set up the narrative. I think this one has a mistake as well. The alignment of the rims of the bucket does not makes us look like that we are coming out of the pot. I think it needed camera adjustments. I mean, this idea was more narrative. It was not just make something look big. It was to make the viewer believe that two tiny people are pushing a giant obstacle after escaping a confined space. So that meant the illusion had to support the story logic. And this idea basically taught me something very important from the paper, that force perspective depends on customer perception of quality. In this case, the customer is viewer. The viewer does not care how clever my setup was. The viewer only cares whether the shot feels believable for the 3 seconds it appears on the screen. This idea required me to think about proportion more carefully. The pot had to feel like a confined architectural space, and the stone had to feel like a giant obstacle rather than a just a stone placed in the foreground. That meant background selection and framing became critical. If the frame showed too much of the surrounding environment, the illusion weakened. If I framed too tightly, I lost the story. Operationally, that is a trade off problem. I needed to think visual information to tell the story. Like I needed enough visual information to tell the story, but not so much that the real scale becomes obvious. This idea also made me think more clearly about bundling and unbundling from my paper. Force perspective does not unbundle the audience's relationship to the movie, but within the production, it does rebundle the tasks. Set logic, actor blocking, and camera composition all collapse into one single moment of execution. Instead of solving a scale in post production, I was trying to solve it at the moment of capture. So this was a strong example of internal process rebundling, but not market innovation. I'm gonna show the final execution that we were able to do. I think it's very silly. I think you're gonna see my hand coming out, and I was yelling my friend the 3, 2, 1. I think yeah, this was the idea we were trying. I think we did try, I think, a few different things to see what works or what does not. I think in this one, we were trying really hard to push it. Yeah, I think so. My friend was pulling the rock from the side, and I think we were trying to see what different things could work or not. And I think I was trying back and forth with him where my hand would align with the stone and how he would basically execute it. Yeah, yeah, not this one, but I think these were the many multiple takes we had to see which idea works or not. And uh, so for third idea, we had this. Um, I'm going to jump onto the next idea. I ended up seeing this video where basically there's this person sitting on a table with their with a mug, and there's a car on top of the table and a person standing, and it would appear they would blow on the car, and turns out is a visual trick. And so this seemed a very interesting idea to me. And if you look at the table, it's a hollow table with just a triangular section not cut out, and the mug placed on top of that. And this idea, I think it's a car commercial. I was not able to find the original video for this one, but just a, GIF file. And so I wanted to recreate this idea. And uh, so for table, it was operationally very interesting. So originally we were supposed to shoot this idea in Porto Cove, but due to very windy weather and we could not. We were looking for locations. We were scouting for locations for this one, and we ended up going to a parking lot. And that itself, this kind of change alone says a lot about operations. That in theory, one location was better aesthetically, and we so this is done in like some sort of a enclosed space, like a warehouse with a lot of lighting. And we were looking for a similar place, and uh, Porto Cove environmentally became unstable, so we had to make a relocation decision to protect execution. So I ended up going to a parking lot for this idea, and I'm gonna show how we did to do how we did that. And I think uh, this was the idea, and this is how we try to basically recreate it. And I ended up going to IKEA to look for a similar table. So ended up going to IKEA, and I bought this table. They have this series called LAC. I'm gonna pop this up on the side and show this table. So they have this table called LAC, and what good about this table is that the insides of this table is made from paper honeycomb structure. So it's basically cardboard paper, and I think it talks about it somewhere. It's a honeycomb paper construction that basically gives strength to this table. So I ended up buying two sets of these table, and then what we basically did was uh, for preparation, uh, we ended up cutting the portions of the table and making a hole in it. And then uh, I think I also visited to Dollarama and got this hacksaw blade. It looks like that. And it's for cutting branches. So I use that hacksaw blade to basically cut down the edges and make a refined process for this table. And then I think I bought a white colored duct tape to basically. Uh, I think my friend made a time lapse of this video, and then after cutting the edges, the three sides, I duct taped the remaining exposed part so that everything appears white. And I ended up putting this duct tape on it. So in the final product, it appears like this. And also, one thing, if you notice, there is on the table, on this, the car, where the car is placed, it is placed on a very large white space that appears to be the top of the table. So I looked up my friend's car. It was a Honda CRV, which is about 15.4 feet in length. So I thought to buy a tarp that we could place on the ground and the car could stand on top of it. So I ended up placing an order for a tarp about 24 feet by 24 feet tarp. I placed an order for that, and then I got that, and uh, we tried to use it, but I think the camera was placed in a way that we didn't have to use it. So that was the idea. And my other friend Sarthak, who's the tiny man standing on top of the table with the car. So we had this idea. He said, "My car is not going to work." We built sort of a narrative around it, and I'm just looking at it at him, and not directly at him, but I'm looking at the table, but the illusion looks like I'm looking at him. I think we had very poor lighting in this video, the complete video. And the parking lot, there were a lot of challenges in this one. We did try to recreate it. I mean, but the lighting on top of the light that we see in the parking lot, the sensor over it, the sensor would they were sensor based basically, and if someone walks in that area, the light would turn on. So we had to keep our movement every few 20 or 30 seconds because the lights would go off. And at some point, even security came over saying that you need to get permission from media team to film here. So we had to request them that this is just for a university project, and they somehow agreed. So this one idea contained almost everything from my paper: location uncertainty, time pressures, environmental instability, um, external constraints, coordination under uncertainty, and replanning under limitations of resources. So the IKEA table also added an interesting material dimension. I mean, the hollow look was visually useful, but materially it was also fragile and limited in what it could do. So operations was not just about the camera, it was also about the design of the object. The illusion here depended on making it look there was a car on top of a table in a believable way. I'm not sure we make it really convincing in this part, but uh, we tried our best to make it believable. I think we did multiple takes of this one. I have uh, another take of it. I'm gonna show that one too. Uh, my friend is queuing start, and just to communicate between ourselves, we were on a call. So on the side which is not visible in the camera, there is a phone, and my friend is talking on the phone because I can't directly look at him because it would break the illusion. So I'm looking at the table, and that's how the whole idea went through. So, if I had to summarize the idea in one sentence, I would say it was the strongest direct observation proof that force perspective is an operational discipline. And that's what we basically tried to execute here. And similarly, for my next idea, uh, I'm going to show my next idea as well. This was our next idea. I'm going to briefly talk about this one. So on Instagram, there is a feature of making reels, which is like short videos that can be watched in loops. Within that portrait frame, people use this format where they play a video in the background and they superimpose a smaller version of themselves at a corner. And you see me at the corner. And they basically they'll talk about the video which would be playing in the background behind a green screen. And so this is one of my friends Sarthak who sent me this idea on Instagram about it's a very common idea, and so we took inspiration, but there was this one specific idea where one person sort of broke the illusion of this trick. So I'm going to play the video. It's basically me talking about this idea, and I'm going to talk about what's happening in the video behind me. And this is the only place we end up using the tarp. And you'll see the table, the lac table, the hollow table. And suddenly my friend walks up to me and he breaks the illusion by saying uh, uh, that I am part of that video. So it was one of those tricks that I got to use, include force perspective and try to break that force perspective in the same frame. So operationally, this was also the moment where I saw modern platforms influence expectations. Short form content sort of encourages loopability, fast recognition, and visual compression, but that does not make force perspective into an innovation, but it does show that the surrounding media environment shapes which operational technique feels attractive or worth using. So this idea sort of helped me clarify the argument in the paper that illusion can travel across media formats, but it still does not mean that the technique itself is disruptive and innovation. So it's basically layered digital composition inside of platform native format. And this was the fourth idea that we had. And for our last idea, uh, I'm gonna show my fifth idea. I think we ended up we were scouting locations for this one, and we ended up going to Stanley Park. So this idea basically, there's this YouTuber called Steve Ramsden who talks about using model car as a force perspective, and it does not require any tricky editing or compositing. I have listed that video as a reference in my paper. We looked for multiple locations and eventually came to Stanley Park to recreate this one. This was one of the most important ideas because it connects directly to one of my references and to the main logic of the paper. Steve Ramsden, his example is useful because it shows force perspective in a very stripped down form. You do not need complicated compositing. You need the right location, the right angle, the right foreground, background relationship, and the discipline to make the frame do the work. We looked for multiple locations to recreate that, but I feel we were looking for a narrow road to do that, uh, and and I ended up buying a model car. I think I purchased uh, 1:18th special edition 1970 Ford Mustang for this one. Beetle is one of my favorite cars. I was looking for a Beetle, but I think I was not able to find the right ratio for this model car. I still have it with me. I think it looks like that, and so I used this car for this idea, and so I think this is. And I also bought a duct tape that basically has some grain in it, and I ended up using that in this to model the look of a road. So I pasted this duct tape with that looks like sort of gives the visual of a road, and so just to create that the car is standing on the road, and then we tried to basically create this, and I think it's my friend was trying to position me in a specific angle in a specific place so that it looks like I am looking at the insides of the car and trying to see what fits. And so that was the idea basically. And this was, I think I have another video of it somewhere. Hold on. So I think this was one of the takes. We had very limited lighting, and so it appears as if I'm appearing close. I'm looking at the insides of the car. I'm looking at there, and then I'm trying to break that illusion by coming really, real close to the car, and just to show that it's a small car. I think we didn't have proper daylight, otherwise it would have been very convincing. And you could see the road duct tape in the back. So I tried to create that, and I think I said five ideas, but we had another idea where we tried to, and I think we were losing a lot of daylight here. And it was raining at that time, and this is basically we have a real car, me coming out of a real car, and then looking inside the tiny car, which would look like I'm looking at a Ford Mustang, and we would juxtaposition both of those objects and put those objects in juxtaposition. I think it was very dark in this video, but we tried to capture. I think we did one more take of this, me coming out of the car and looking at insides of the car, and then sort of immediately breaking the illusion by coming real close. And that was the idea that we had. So these were some of the ideas, and what all of these ideas basically taught me is, first, Force perspective depends on exactness. Small errors matter. A few inches matter, a few degrees matter, a few seconds matter. That aligns directly with the course language around productivity, precision, and repeatability. Second, force perspective shifts work upstream. You solve more of the image before capture. That means planning, more coordination, more testing, more discipline in pre production and on set. It can reduce later post production dependence, but only if the setup is controlled well enough. Third, force perspective does not behave like a disruptive innovation. It does not change who finances film, distributes them, exhibits them, or why audiences consume them. It changes how the shot is made. That is why I argue it is operations, not innovation. And just to to conclude, this project basically made me appreciate why this course format matters. Writing the paper helped me clarify the technique conceptually, but trying to shoot these all of these ideas made me think the operations real side, the reality of operations. Force perspective is often described casually as a trick, but after doing this project, I do not think that specific description is enough. It is controlled system of visual production. It depends on planning, communication, environmental adaptation, material constraints, and quality control. It is creative, yes, but the creativity works only through process discipline. So the final takeaway from both my paper and my direct observation is this: Poe's perspective improves how films are made, not who makes them, who gets paid, or why audiences watch films. That is why I classify it as operations, not innovation. With that, I would like to say thank you so much. Thank you, Professor.